Hello, I'm Michael, and welcome to MD in the Shop. Like my father-in-law Dieter says, it's time to shut up and work. And need something to mark this with. Oh, I know. All right, today is the 28th of February, and it is what? Quarter after 1. And 3, 2, 1, mark. All right, we got our video synced. Today I am working with 3 cameras. I have you, and I have you, and I have you. So let's see what we can do with these 3 cameras and have a little bit of fun. Continue working on the jig for this truck. I've done a couple of things. I will do a quick walk around and show you what we've been up to. So what we have here is the truck itself. And so far, we have 2x3 square tubing, which has been cut to 190 inches in length. And we have our cross pieces here that are set at 32 inches. And that's going to give us approximately 34 inches to the center of the rails, which is exactly what we have for the center of the rails of the chassis of the truck, at least the back half anyways. So the goal here is to get these rails so that they are plumb, level, and square. So far, just a little bit of playing around with the jack stands, and we're pretty good across the back. So what I'm going to do is start at the back, work my way forward, and go corner to corner and make sure that everything is plumb level and square. I've got some small pieces of metal to use as shims, and the goal here is to get this thing sitting on 4 jack stands to have it so that it is in perfect shape underneath the chassis of the truck. Then I'll weld on some legs that will be adjustable and on casters, and then we can drop the truck down on top of the jig, and everything will be nice and level and square. So I've got 2x3 square tube. Everything's just kind of loosely fit right now. It's not locked into place too tightly, so we'll use some clamps and some straps and all kinds of stuff to get this thing so it's locked in nice and tight before we wire feed weld all this together. I do have a TIG welder, and I could spend some time working on my TIG welding skills. However, I'm not really too concerned about this thing. I will just spend a bit of time, throw some tacks on there on the corners once it's all set to go, and then just wire feed a bit of it in there, and we'll be good. Okay, and here we've got the front of the truck, and everything is just kind of sitting here very rough. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough clearance with these 2x3 square tubes underneath the chassis of the truck, that the truck was sitting up high enough that I could get these leveled off. And then once I get this all welded up and the legs under it, I can very gently drop this thing back down. But just sort of rough measurements right now. I'm going to spend a lot of time getting this thing squared and leveled, and then we'll have a real nice platform to work off of. So you can see a little bit better here underneath the 4-link bars and the chassis that was already built, and how we want to have these guys here lining up with these guys here. And then what I'll do is I can take some of the extra tubing that I have, some 2x2 tubing, and create spacer blocks underneath here. Maybe lift this up a little bit higher. So that way the chassis is actually going to sit on top of this. And the reason for that is I like the idea of having clearance so that for welding and running wires and doing any of that kind of stuff, I'm going to have a bit of a gap in there. So yeah, I'm still not sold on doing it that way yet. We're just going to see how this evolves. So the mission for today is going to be to get this set up. Unfortunately, it's Sunday today. I need a couple of feet of 2 1/4 inch 120 wall square tube to finish off the legs. And I'll show you the design idea that I have for doing these legs. I got a fancy new whiteboard here. Figured it'd be very helpful to have that kind of thing. So this is the overall chassis, 15 feet 10 inches in overall length. The bars, crossbars are 32 inches. What I'm going to do is this is going to be where the legs are going to get welded to the table. We're going to see how things go as far as any sag in here. I don't want to put any legs underneath this point of the chassis yet. We're going to see how that 2x3 square tube holds up. If I have the rear end kind of in this location and the front end in this location, most of the weight's going to be close to the legs anyways, so there shouldn't be too much stress on these midpoints. We'll just see how it goes. And then this is going to be the idea for the legs. So the idea here is to have the 2x2 square tube welded to these plates that I have here, this 1/4 inch plate, and then we'll have some bolts in here going through to bolt our casters into place. So this is going to be a piece of 2 1/4 inch tube, this guy here, that's going to slip all the way down. We're going to leave a little bit of a gap here at the bottom. And then on the very top, I'm going to weld a piece of plate in there with a 3/4 inch nut and a 2 inch long 3/4 inch bolt. So as I push down on this, it's going to push down on the leg and create a gap in here. And that's going to allow these to go up and down and level off. And then here, a little 3/8 inch bolt, that's going to come through and pinch on the inside. So once I get my height set, I can lock all this down in place and I know it's not going to move. So that's the goal. And we are going to get to work on doing this to start. And I can weld some of these pieces up today. And then tomorrow I'll pick up my 2 1/4 inch tube that I need to create that slip fit over top. And we'll be good to go. My father-in-law, I've known him for 14 or 15 years now, and he's a former carpenter, retired now, and he has a saying which I really like, and Dieter always says, shut up and work. So now we've had our time to go over the plan and the detail. Now it's time. This is for you, Dieter. Time to shut up and work. And here we have pretty much the biggest welding clamp. I actually have another one that's about a foot longer than this one. But these are made for welding, and they are awesome. These clamps have a ton of clamping power. All right, so One of the tools that I will be using to make sure that we get this frame set so that it is level is a laser. It's a freaking laser. So this thing is really cool. I use this thing for construction all the time. It's automatic self-leveling, does vertical, horizontal. So we're more interested in the horizontal. I'm going to set it up. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to steal my tripod for a couple of minutes because I need to adjust the height of this. I've got about a 2-inch window to get the laser so that it shoots through underneath the truck frame on top of the jig. So that way I can go around with my measuring tape and look at all the different points around the frame to make sure that we're bang on all the way around every single corner and along the rails. So the easiest way for me to do that is to use this laser and go point to point. I find it to be more accurate than using a level because I've got a 4-foot level on a almost 16-foot span. So it can be a little bit off depending on where you are, and then reading the bubble, is it like a little bit on this side, a little bit on that side. So I find the laser to be very helpful. So I have to steal my tripod from my camera and get this thing set up. Bingo. All right. So what we have here is we have our laser, and it is going to shoot a beam underneath the truck and just about an inch or so above the frame. And we will be able to take data points all the way along to make sure that we are in good shape. So you can see the number doesn't really matter so much. It just happens to work out that it's pretty much right at 1 inch. So now we can go around to other points on the frame. And see where we're at. Let's get this level out of the way. There we go. So we can see we're 1.25 inches here. And here we're about 7/8. So we're just a little bit high, and got the lights on. So if we turn the lights out, you can see it even better. There we go. We're about 7/8 of an inch there. So we're a little bit high on the front side, and we can make our adjustments with the jacks. And then from there, we will make some fine-tuning adjustments with some shims. So what we need to do is pick one corner to be our reference that we're always going to go back to and measure off of. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to start at the back. All right. So what we'll do is we're going to start at the back, and we can even use this number as our reference. We are, so if we go right back here, we're 1 inch and 3/16. So we just have to remember that number and use that to level off when we go corner to corner and side to side. So what we'll do is we'll get this other side leveled first. So we'll get 1 inch and 3/16 on the other side. See, right now we're at a little over 1.25 inches. So what we need to do is the opposite. We need to bring this up about 1/16 of an inch, and that's going to put us right where we need to be. All right, we are level on all 4 corners. We are square because we've checked our measurements, and we are ready to throw some tack welds on the bars to get this thing locked into place. So I'm going to break out the MIG machine, get that thing fired up. So there's going to be a bit of noise. We'll get this thing tacked, and then we will double check again. All right, so I had my little assistant come in and help me make sure that this thing was still square after tacking it in place. So we're looking good as far as square is concerned. Gonna turn on the laser one more time before we weld the sucker up. I've got some pretty healthy tacks in there. I'm a big fan of kind of over tacking versus under tacking because I find having a little bit more of a solid tack in there to be very helpful, especially with a heavier steel like this. And I was pretty confident it wasn't going to move around too much, so I wasn't too worried about having to get in there with a zip disc and pop out a tack if I need to. It's not finished product, it's just for a jig, so if it looks a bit ugly with a bit of grinding, who cares? But I'd rather have a good healthy tack on this stuff, and then that way I know when I go to tack another side or do a little bit of adjusting, it's not going to pop and blow the whole thing apart. So a little bit healthier tack on there is okay by me on this stuff. Grab our measuring tape and double check our laser. We are done with the laser. We have our chassis jig sitting level and square, tacked in place. We're going to throw on the old wire feed and get the sucker welded up. We don't have to do full welds on this thing. It's not holding up a bridge, so I'm not overly concerned about full weld 360 degree around these tubes. For today, the goal is to get the thing in place and weld it up enough that if it gets bumped around, it's not going to move. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to throw on some welds now. I'm going to move around as we go because I don't want to overheat one tube and then cause any warping. So do a little weld, go to another corner, do a weld, and just keep going around the truck that way. So we'll be in good shape here very shortly to move on to the next phase, making the legs. All right, my mighty little MIG machine here is just about out of gas. So I'm going to be making a trip to the gas store tomorrow, and I will do as much as I can here. I'm going to weld the plates to the legs, which are going to hold onto the casters. So we'll start there and see how far we can get before we run out of gas today. That's one of the things that's challenging about doing this stuff is, especially on the weekends, you get into something, you get moving along, pretty good momentum, and then you run out of steel, run out of gas, run out of whatever, and there's always something to do, but it's nice when you got that momentum just to keep things going. So bad on me for making sure I didn't have enough gas to get through what I was doing today, but we'll get done what we can get done and pick up the ball and run with it tomorrow. All right, so what I'm going to do here with these plates and legs, a couple of different ways you can do it. I want to do the best that I can to get these things so they are true to, the plates are true to the legs. And I like the idea of just taking a couple of minutes, use the vise and a level, get this thing so it's where it needs to be, and then it will make it a lot easier to get them as close as we possibly can. I'll use some magnets if I can to hold it in place. don't have a lot of surface area for the magnet to grab onto, so we'll use the level just to double check and make sure we're good. But let's get this thing level. We're good that way. At least we can make half an effort. Now, this is where you get the benefit of using a thing like a cutoff saw over using a hacksaw or a zip disc, because just dropping the level on this thing, it is pretty crisp. There's really not much for me to do. Here we have the benefit of using a cutoff saw or a chop saw of some kind to cut the steel, because here we are with our plate sitting level in the vise, and if you take a look here, it is actually sitting pretty darn level. So that makes it really easy for me now to get this thing tacked into place, make sure we've got it exactly where we want it to be, and we are good to go. Now, here's a little trick when you are fabricating stuff and you're working with something like this, and it's not perfectly level, which is okay, and you want to get it as true as you possibly can. So what I do is I know I've got my plate level side to side this way. We are bang on the money there. So what I'm looking at is how true is this pipe in that same orientation. So what it needs to do is actually tilt over this way a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a tack on the opposite side. So basically, I'm going to put a tack on the direction that I want to pull the metal, because what it'll do is it'll act like a hinge. And what I can do is throw a tack here. Then the heat oftentimes will actually pull it just that little bit that you want it to come over and pull it into level for you. So always start on the side that is the way that you want to pull the metal, and quite often the heat itself will actually pull the metal up. If not, you can always give it a little bit of a tap, or use a little bit of a wedge somehow, or use your hand to get it where you want it to go, and then throw a tack on the other side. And exactly what I figured was going to happen. Just that little bit of heat from the tack. You can see here there's just, if I wanted to, I could compress this. But I don't have to do that. All right, so what we'll do is we'll double check our base plate, and we're good. Now, the other thing is, I don't know how square this has been cut, so I don't want to do that, right? That's not going to tell me how true this pipe is. The cut might be off a little bit, so let's go by this. And we are bang on the money that way. Beautiful. Let's throw a couple of tacks on there, make sure it's not going to go anywhere. Beauty. That wire feed's a little bit high. Knock that down. So now, just do a quick double check. We are good shape. Weld her up.